We'll start that again with the mic on. It's 5:30. I'll call the meeting to order. I'd like to start by acknowledging that this meeting is respectfully held on the traditional territory of the Sycas First Nation, on whose land we live, work, and play. We have an agenda circulated. Would somebody like to move adoption? Seconder? All in favor? That's carried. We have the minutes from the March 31st regular meeting and the April 7th special council meeting. Seconder? All in favor? That's carried. No bylaws. So we go straight to delegations. Robin Work.
Hello. So I'm just here to present the quarterly vacancy report as we do from Work BC every quarter. Has everybody got a copy?
We do.
Okay, good, because I don't think I have actually photocopied enough, but I'm glad. So as you looked over it, I'm not sure if you have any questions about it. I think that it's a fairly normal vacancy report. We are about maybe 5 to 10% down in the number of job vacancies compared to last year at this time. And just looking at last year, the first job that's on our list here, the social and community service workers, was also the first one last year. But other than that, everything else has changed. We're seeing a shift, I think, in the local labor market more towards service, not so much primary industry intensive. And so that's definitely one shift that's happening there. If we look at the top employers down below, you see that it's the usual suspects. It's the same employers that we normally have. And what's interesting is that the first four there basically are the majority of the employers with vacancies. And there's quite a, like, for example, Artemis has 22 different occupations in amongst that 33. So there's a wide variety of different positions being sought by all these employers here. So if anyone has any questions about that, I'm happy to answer those. We have our job fair coming up on April 30th in the arena. And so we're all excited about that and hope that we can get a real good turnout of both employers and job seekers.
Any questions for Robin? Go ahead, Councillor Frankel.
I always enjoy these reports because they try to get through the numbers. We were at some meetings with the public service lately where we've heard numbers of 12 or 20 FTEs not being pulled. I see we have 6 on this vacancy. Would that be because those are only 6 that are advertised? Or how deep do you go, Robin? Like, do they can't get people as FTEs, full-time equivalents, into these seats, so sometimes they don't try, or are these just and is this 6 number one that's just for advertising?
Well, those are just 6 positions that were advertised during that quarter. There may be positions that had opened and closed prior to that it may be referring to. Sometimes as well, there's some duplication where they've posted the same position more than once. But other than that, I think like they do have a lot of in-service positions that aren't posted publicly. We only focus on the ones that are public. Right. Yeah, so in-service is probably the bigger vacancy challenge there.
Yeah.
And probably the same with Northern Health too, knowing that they have 13 LPN positions open here right now. The 5 probably doesn't really reflect it, right?
I think that's right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's the other thing too, is if there's a posting listed here, it doesn't necessarily, if they may be looking for multiple people, we don't actually have that as something that we're tracking, just that there is a vacancy for that position. So it's more positions than FTEs perhaps is part of that, is what you're referring to there too.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Anybody else with a question? Maybe, and I don't know if you can answer this in a public meeting or not, but just wondering with the plateau shutdown, have you seen a lot of employees looking for employment or?
Well, in my experience, what has typically happened in these closures is that we get sort of that initial first wave of people. And after that, it becomes a little bit more of a trickle. And we'll probably see another increase in folks coming in once EI gets closer to running out and people who've kind of taken a little bit of time. I think this one is a little bit different too, because it seems that there's been a lot of people who took different, buyouts, and also the timing of Blackwater's opening up some of its, main laboring positions at that same time as the closure announcement, I think helped there as well. So, yeah, but it's not been quite what we expected in terms of numbers, but that it's still early
Yeah.
in the game, in my opinion. So,
Well, thank you very much. It's always great to get this information and see where things are at.
and anytime that that you need information, you know where to reach us.
Sounds good. Thank you,
Okay,
Robin.
thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to 6.1.
So some various concerns or difficulties associated with the arena use policy um, uh, prompted a review. And so Wileen worked with, both staff from the arena and our booking, and to a smaller extent, use a couple of users, and tried to make this a more workable and more effective policy. We've been cognizant of the fact that, there's a high level of subsidy at the arena, approximately $400,000 a year. And so, we felt that some of the fees aren't keeping up with costs. In fact, we know that they're not keeping up. So we're recommending some slight increases for rentals, and $5 an hour increase to rentals. So I'm without reading the whole policy, Wileen, I don't think we did consider a flooding fee, which is common practice in most at most arenas, but I don't think we put one in.
Got to find you on here. You're not Willeen.
Oh, it just turned on.
Oh, did it?
Um,
Okay.
Yeah, no, we didn't put it in. The one community is putting it in for $30 in their upcoming amendment, but other places have just added it into the to their bylaw, but they don't really specify how much they've put in.
So that was one thing that we thought, during these times, you kind of, maybe you capture some of those, you catch up on some of those costs, but not all of the costs. So, so we recognize that is something, some ice users require more floods or demand more floods, which equates to more cost. But we're saying at this point in time, if we achieve the $5 an hour base time, that meets our needs for now. And yeah, I mean, the rest of the report that Wileen put together is pretty self-explanatory, but just an updating of the policy for now, just to keep pace with costs. And we also kind of addressed some of the loopholes that we were experiencing with the policy, and so those have been addressed as well in the written portion. So it's not all just financial. We just try to make it a little bit easier to read, a little more comprehensive. And one of the things that was a real bone of contention was a lottery system for get priority over ice. And so we've removed that and come up with another system that's used in other places. We didn't reinvent the wheel, but just seems to be a little bit more functional, and hopefully will create less controversy.
What system is that?
And ask Wileen to
It is in the priority of use, so, sorry, thank you. Those are the group in order of priority, who gets priority, and then the bookings is under section 10.
That's 10, yeah.
The ice allocation process. Sorry, I just can't see it very well. And I wrote the report the policy a while ago. So it explains the timeline and what they have to do if they cancel. It used to be if you could find someone else to fill your spot, then you could just cancel whenever you want, but we changed it in the last iteration of the bylaw. So it's just something that Jessica had worked on with the user groups that they all thought would work out better than the lottery. More of a talking to each other, trying to figure it out process than drawing names.
So it doesn't change that, like the general process is, their basic process is the same. Still, there's an ice users agreement. There's an initial schedule that gets circulated and everybody gets back together again. And at that point in time, they're supposed to discuss it and negotiate. You know, could you move half an hour this way or an hour or whatever? Well, it's facilitated, but
Yeah.
yes, it's
At the ICE users meeting.
at the ICE users meeting, and then once those discussions have occurred, then our solidified schedule is sent out, and then we actually step out of the schedule set, we step out of it, and then if there's changes, has to be done in advance of 28 days. And if I agree to switch with your team, our teams agree, then you do it outside, like the district's not going to be involved in that discussion, but you have to notify us. So,
Councillor Lozier?
I know this can be challenging sometimes. And I had a couple questions around dates, like that October 1st. It says competition requests will receive priority over weekend requests for practice or recreation until October 1st. So I guess what I'm trying to understand is I did check with Jeremy, the president of minor hockey here, to just find out when the league schedule comes out for the Northwest District. Because I think last year there was some challenge with, all the ice had to be booked before that schedule came out. And then, oh my gosh, we're supposed to have a league game on this day. And then there was just some challenges there. So he thought that the league schedule came out the middle of September. It was going to be out the middle of September. So the October 1st deadline won't be an issue then. But if that schedule doesn't come out by September 1st, at the ICE users meeting in April, like because they don't, minor hockey doesn't know when the league games are scheduled, should they be booking weekend ice every weekend and then once the schedule comes out, canceling it? I don't would that be prior to 28 days, or do they have? Yeah. So if they booked that ice, if they book weekend ice times,
They would.
yeah, for sure
Every
not.
weekend.
Yeah.
I think it was historically, they've always had it by October 1st.
Okay.
So that's why that date is there.
Okay.
But yeah, if they book every weekend and then they cancel, even if they
Sure.
pay for it, then people don't know that those spots are available. So they
Yeah.
could go unbooked.
Yeah, and I guess that was just my question was around that October 1st, as long as that schedule is out, then it's going, it'll be fine. But I know last year there was.
the good thing is, the great thing about the arena, there's way more people interested in renting ice than what we can accommodate.
Yeah.
We turn people away
Yeah,
all the time, and including organized events. right?
yeah,
But at some point in time, you have to let people that aren't with minor hockey or aren't
Oh,
with,
for sure.
those things,
Yeah.
access to some of the bits and pieces. And so the thing is we want to, we put in a 20-day cancellation process. 'Cause
sure.
we don't want them
That
to
makes
just go and
sense.
say, we're taking every weekend and all these other groups don't have, or other people don't have access to it. So I guess this is, this has been a work in progress for 8 months. This is kind of the best we could come up with. And because the thing is like I said, we're trying to create opportunities as best we can for the competitive groups, but we've got to leave something for.
No, I'm not challenging that at all. I'm just wanting to make sure that, you know, that October 1st, whatever, and you've got to set a date. And so, but he, you know, when the schedules for league aren't out, sometimes that's challenging. So, but, okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Vandola.
I just wanted to say it, just looking at the cost comparables, on the tables you've got there, it's really great to see that once you take out the high cost and low cost outliers, that, our numbers are really in really good shape there. So that's really good to see. That was it.
So after I did this report, I heard back from Smithers and they're the highest for everything except dry floor. And their rates are going up 20% this year for next season for September. And they're the highest. So, and someone else that I hadn't talked to, I think Chetwynd or somewhere, one of them anyways, they're 86% this year and their council subsidy and their council's aim is 40 as well. And they said they will never get below 80. So it's not just us, it's universal. But everybody's rates are going up a large amount this September.
It's good.
Okay, so we're looking for first, second, and third. Seconder? What's that? Okay, we're looking for all those things. We're looking to rescind the old policy, adopt the new one, and give first, second, and third to the bylaw. Is that what you meant, Councillor Lawsey?
Second.
Okay, good. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, 6.2 Cemetery Amendment Bylaw.
Yeah, I can speak to it, but Willeen produced this report. And bottom line is that we're just suggesting an adjustment of fees to reflect significant increases in costs. And, you know, just to cover the costs and to give it a very small amount of grace so that we don't have to review it in 6 months from now.
Fortunately, that's the times we live in right now, eh? Would somebody like to, okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Carried. 6.3 Small Business Cardboard Recycling Fees Repeal Bylaw. You have a recommendation there?
This is, Chamber of Commerce has agreed to take this over, so we don't need this bylaw anymore. That's why we need to repeal it.
I'll move the recommendation.
Seconder? Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay, 6.4 DPA.
So I'm Ben has been managing this and receiving lots and lots of calls from the potential developer here. But at the same time, we've been having lots of discussions about the appropriateness of the site. So this is for where the space beside the Ford dealership, it's the pizza place, proposing to put in a gas station. And so we asked them, again, administration staff were uncomfortable with that location, so we asked them for a traffic summary. And I'm going to actually ask Will to comment on that. I have thoughts on it myself, but his assessment.
You're
Yeah, so we had L&M take a look at this as they're putting in the
application on behalf of the developer. They've taken a look at it as far as the TAC guidelines, as far as visibility is concerned. And they've found that it meets those requirements. It's all based off of a 50-kilometer-an-hour zone. And so we know that that is not always the case in this location. As people are going up the hill, they often are exceeding the speed limit in order to get past large trucks that are on that segment in order to be in front of them before they actually get to the narrowing section again. So it doesn't take those things into account, and it actually can't. They're not allowed to put it for a different posted speed limit because, of course, that's not what's posted. So there's a lot of those pieces. So as far as comfort is concerned, that's not really, their report doesn't actually provide those, that benefit. The other part is about clearing times. So when a truck comes into that location for fueling, it will be heading from Prince George out towards Prince Rupert or places beyond towards the west. And so when it leaves that site, it's got to cross those 2 lanes of traffic in order for it to get onto westbound traffic again. That's the biggest thing that I have concerns with, and also with large vehicles, motorhomes, RVs that are being pulled, all of that type of stuff. I think we've all been in that situation where we're at that location and you pull out and you don't realize there's a vehicle on the other side of that big truck coming up. So that is the things that we've had the biggest concerns, and why we thought that we would try to get some additional information from an engineering standpoint, but it didn't really support the comfort feeling that I think all of us are feeling.
Councillor Franco. Well, did you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I could just, so speed limit and visibility, but I don't think that tells the whole story about that area, especially for eastbound traffic. The traffic study was disappointing in that it doesn't talk about vehicle behavior, overtaking slower declining vehicles and how that increases speed. It also doesn't talk about the distraction points of suddenly somebody putting on the left-hand turn signal to turn into forestry, and how, a driver's paying more attention to that than maybe what's, ahead of them. So those are additional hazards that I have concern about, and just sharing that with council, but we've intentionally not made a recommendation on this.
Sounds good. So you got Councillor Franco, then Councillor Martins, then Councillor Van Dolen.
Oh, there's a lineup tonight. I'm not going to get into the 50. That was one of my points. Thank you both for talking about it. I don't think there's a soul that does 50 up there. If they do, they're probably misleading. Except the Professional Trucking Association, the road there does. But geez, am I turning red? I'm embarrassed already, Ernest. But so let's think about that. My concern is coming from Prince George and coming across those 2 lanes. And I think that's a big concern. So I don't see traffic numbers. I don't see numbers of vehicles that go through that area. I still want more information. And then that leads me on to, somewhere along the line over the last couple of months, we saw an alternate route, maybe a traffic light between a dump road and a new road going over in front of Westline Ford or behind Westline Ford and then coming out that way. I think that's got to be our safest bet. I really do. I just think that's pulling out from Westline Ford myself, and there's close calls, and that's not a big truck load fueling up. So I think I'm not going to say it's the wrong location. Business will dictate whether it's the wrong location or not for a fuel station. But I think we need to make sure that we're in a safety issue here, and I don't feel we're even close, even though we had L&M Engineering base it on a review of 50. What if it's 80 or more? We're just asking for trouble unless we have a light somewhere. So that's it. Thanks.
Good, thanks. Yeah, no, speed is a problem up there. I'm kidding for sure when we say that. But it is, I wonder if any consideration has been given to, like it used to be a restaurant there, and the parking lot's still basically the same with kind of, it looks like about 300 feet of highway access with a few no posts in the middle. It's almost like there's two driveways, a separate driveway for that motel and then another one for the Ford and for this restaurant. If that, all that traffic from those businesses had to go down to move over as far as the Ford dealership would also alleviate a little bit of that. Because they do come out, I mean, we've all used that driveway too, the closest one to the top of the hill. Then the sight lines probably aren't good enough, but the map and stuff that we got here from L&M showed 100% going through right by Ford, not the one closer to the hill. So that for sure adds to the congestion problem there, I think, for sure. The safest thing, we've talked about that before. I think everyone agreed, just like you said, Councillor Frankel, that if there was a traffic light anywhere, it almost has to be back as far as Dump Road.
Yeah.
That would solve all those issues, probably.
Even turning off. Yeah, no access.
Use the frontage, yeah, use the frontage road all the way to the dump road, yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Similar comments. As district manager at the Ministry of Forests there, we have significant issues with forestry traffic trying to cross the lanes of traffic to go east. So it's a very similar scenario for traffic coming out of the proposed gas station going west. So you're crossing traffic in the same thing. You can't see any of that speeding traffic in the passing lane coming up the hill. We've got a proposed, back at that time, we had a survey by MOTI doing the traffic numbers, and it was pretty significant. The amount of traffic that travels through that area, as some of the most traffic numbers along the entire highway section between Vanderhoof and Prince George. And with the proposed new subdivision area across that way, I think it's almost mandatory that a stoplight goes in at Dump Road that gives all the traffic plenty of sight distance and opportunity, and really to where the existing turnoffs for both the hillside and for the portion, that should all be closed off, and they should have frontage roads that access it to the Dump Road site to get in and out of there just for safety purposes. It's because there's too many close calls on that hill. That's it.
Councillor Young.
Just to make it unanimous, almost. So I'm glad you mentioned that on Brewster, because that was one point that I wanted to bring up, because we're already talking about that, like based on the possibility of that being further developed. But the other thing is, two of the other aspects between the auction site and Dump Road, there's very interesting loads at times going into the Dump Road, like we've all seen those things. And also having, we just had a successful auction this past weekend. You see some of the traffic that comes out of there, the trailers and other pieces. So it's a complicated piece that's already in my mind. And I think a lot of us here, it already feels unsafe the way it is at times.
Yeah.
That's why we keep talking about it. So to add this extra, until all of those things I think are addressed, we can't in good faith move ahead. I just think we should be a little more adamant in saying, like, look, there's way too much at stake here. That's just my opinion, but thanks.
Anybody else? I just want to echo that, and our fiduciary responsibility is first and foremost to safety. And I just don't see how we can approve something that we don't feel is safe. With that, what would next steps be? Like what are our options? Because as I say, I don't feel that we can pass this and be doing our responsibility as a council.
Provide conditions. And, I have to tell you that likelihood of pushback is pretty good. But because the OCP and the zoning says that's a permissible use for that property, but conditions would be, for the developer to purchase the property, construct the frontage road. And but just, I guess the key point is council direction, we'd give them, that's what's necessary. And then that would be in their ballpark as to what the next steps are. But I think pushback is likely.
Yeah, I agree, not only from the proponent, but possibly other businesses there. So I think, I would solicit, and if it hasn't been done yet, I'm sure staff maybe have at least thought about or have done that, but let's solicit that further opinion from Westline, from the Ministry of Forest, from the trucking company, from West Tech, from the auction mart and the hotel. And because we've got ourselves through decades of trying to make things work, we've got ourselves into a bit of a safety pickle here. So I think it takes more. And maybe, Rod, I would suggest that maybe we have a meeting with those proponents all in one room to have the concerns. It doesn't need to be necessarily just staff this time. This is one that might be a council decision because it is, or not a council decision, I'm sorry. But maybe a council meeting where we sit down and have a map and have a really good chin wag so we understand. And they understand where we're coming. Just a thought.
It'd be interesting.
Councillor Martin's first and then we'll,
Thanks. I was just gonna kind of say the same thing you said there. You would have to certainly consult with all the other industry, or so many businesses on both sides. And if we get pushback from this application, and they have a pretty good foot to stand on, if they're got their, can prove it on paper that they say it's okay. But I think the whole works of them would probably not want that big change. It's gonna be harder access for every one of those businesses, or not harder, but a little longer, take longer.
Yeah.
Seems like those kind of things matter in today's world, but the safety factor, I don't think we can go back down there. We can't. We have to be safe there, I think.
so Young.
I know this was brought up a little bit earlier, but again, it seems every year there's more pressure on the highway in terms of large truck traffic coming from the port, coming all the way through. So it's always a bit of a challenge to keep up with the current numbers to see where we're at, because I almost every time I'm going up the hill, there's a big truck. And I don't see it really lessening a whole bunch over the next few years. So even if all of these groups came together, oh yeah, we wouldn't have a problem with it. I'm still back to that safety piece, because all of us have witnessed so many, maybe I'm exaggerating, but I've seen a lot of close calls in my time in this community. So I'm going, and sounds like you've seen some, of you're fairly new to the community, right? So just for that big breath there. So what I'm saying is, even if folks up there say, hey, this would be an asset to us, back to what you stated earlier, I mean, just that fiduciary responsibility going, yes, we like to see advancement. Yes, we like to see improvement. Yes, we like to see more business in our community, but at what cost? Right? So I don't want to overstate it, but it's so complicated in that one section. Until we get that light in, until we've met those needs, I don't see how it makes sense. So.
Go ahead, Will.
Just add one more piece. I did have a conversation with the Ministry of Transportation because there was that preliminary design that was done, very rough. But they said because of the zoning, there's nothing that they could do as far as forcing the developer to move in a certain direction. There is improvements that are happening in various places all over the province that are restricting access points in order for there to be safety. And perhaps there needs to be a little bit of a push from us back to the ministry to say, it's time that we make some improvements there. And maybe that's part of the conversation that we have with the businesses in that area, is that they kind of all come together and say, we need to do an improvement here for our patrons, for ourselves, for our community, and move some of this because of the safety concern that's associated with it.
So we need a resolution of some sort, eh?
I mean, I don't need to be on, but is that direction, or can we just receive the report? No, but we can still receive a report. And have that conversation with you. But to receive is just putting it on a shelf.
It's negative. It's a.
Okay, but sorry, I'm not debating process. A negative resolution was we not approve
negative.
this. So now I'm getting confused because a negative resolution is not approve it. If you would like me to do that, I will say I will not approve this development permit as is. What I'm trying to say is I want to receive it, but direction can be given to staff to get more information and get to these 7 or 8 other operations and let's try a safety route instead of what's in our bylaw.
So in that case, I would recommend you just ignore the recommendation that's on the report. And that just say that the following points be investigated prior to approval of, prior to that coming back to council, and then enumerate them in a bulleted list of exactly what you want staff to
Okay.
look into.
Appreciate that. Thanks.
Did you want to make a?
And just be specific about those
Oh, I'm not specific.
points.
No, I think it's
But-
really good for clarity
okay.
that we do have.
Yeah.
I will try, but I would
Yeah.
love the rest of the teams go
Yeah.
at this. I would move that we request more information and set up a meeting with all of the proponents, Westline, Wesco, Hilltop, West Tech, Egley, Ministry of Forest, and the Auction Mart to discuss the safety issue in front of us. Oh, yeah, RDBN, sorry, yeah,
As well.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, yeah, PJ's is there too. Yep. That is more than I thought, but that's 9 businesses to have at a meeting to talk about our concerns about this development permit in front of us.
Because they would use the same access and egress and that, let's put Valley Diesel and Yellowhead helicopters on there too. Then everybody's,
Okay. Wow.
it's a long list.
Yeah, thank you. I would hope so. My concern right now is that there's no money to do anything with government, so I don't think highways is coming to help us out. And if they're worried about spending $100 and it has to go to a deputy minister, that's a big concern right now. So we're not gonna, we need a solution made by this group. And then how do we get there? Because honestly, what I'm hearing is that we're not feeling comfortable because we know we're gonna cause an accident by allowing this to happen. That's what I hear. So.
So Lozic.
Will also suggested that maybe the ministry needs to have another look. And could that be should that be part of this as well? Yeah. That we perhaps try and set up, or do some advocating for the ministry to look at this piece of highway.
And do we look at our own zoning and OCP and other pieces?
Yeah.
We should review
Yeah.
every highway access property.
That's what we have control over, so it
Yeah.
should be part of that.
I agree.
The others are external to what we control.
Yeah.
So we need to look at our own backyard first.
That won't affect this application though.
No, but
No,
going
no,
forward.
Yeah. then- I mean, not
To
on
do.
Would you put that developer, I won't say his name, but whatever, shouldn't he be involved in that conversation as well? Possibility of the development happening up there?
Oh,
Like, wouldn't he should be on that list as well, I would think.
I'm not sure all those people. I'd have to look.
Those are all the ones that would be affected by it, that's.
There's a couple others. That I think we should have the church on the hill, right, too, because there's a lot of traffic that will come. Then you got residences. Our way up that hill.
For sure.
You got-
Can we put all impacted?
There you go. Anybody within 5 miles. You keep thinking of extra folks.
I know. And we can add to that list as we go along, I'm sure too, right? Because that way it
Okay.
just,
Yeah,
it's not prescriptive.
Yeah.
One person.
Yeah.
Is that the only two? Meeting and the minutes?
Yeah.
Something.
That would be the motion.
Second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? It's carried. It's not very often I put X's on my agenda.
That's a.
Okay, 6.5. Chamber of Commerce Summer Street Closure Request.
Second.
Rod.
I guess when we first. Yeah, no.
Council
Knows the
discuss.
law.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Council.
It's carried.
Sorry, Rod.
You're too quick. You're too quick.
I'm gonna hope for a good weather.
Okay, 6.6, we'll let Rod speak to this before we move on.
Okay. And this might be a moot point, just that, the gifted chef wanted to use the arena concession through the summer as his base of operations. We offered to allow him to remain in the arena until the end of this month, just to determine council's position on this, because we don't normally do that. We don't normally allow this to be a working commercial space through the summer months. But he's since cleaned out his stuff because he felt that allowed. So, like I said, probably we don't even need to deal with it.
Seconder? All in favor? Carried. 6.7.
So this is a historical site. We're trying to amalgamate. There's a real hodgepodge of lots and road allowances. Yeah, it's some small bits of crown land and all that kind of thing. So this is part of that amalgamation process where we want to just get it all into one big property, right? So I didn't know what a nominal rent tenure was, but this relates to the crown land, correctly? And probably going to result in like a long-term agreement. I don't know that Crown will give it to us.
Somebody want to move the recommendation? Seconder? Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried. 6.8, regional mass notification.
Sorry.
You want to speak to it, Rod? Yeah.
It's just a renewal of the Voyant Alert agreement with the regional district.
I'll move that we accept the recommendation.
Seconder? Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. 7.1, council priorities. 7.2, we have the building permit register. Any questions on that? Go ahead, Councilor Frankel.
Hey, Ben, how are you? Have you heard of anything coming down the pipe for housing? I mean, we've got three major developments, the one north of us on the north side, the one south of town, and then the apartments and stuff. Is anyone moving forward, or are they all taking a wait and see?
BC Housing has applied for building permit, so all ready to issue that. Two possible single family dwellings that I've spoken to people about. Sounds promising. Canyon Tree Farms is kind of going on hold for a while. They've reached out and said they're do minimum work and maybe get back to it next year. But all I can think of so.
7.3, crime stats. Any questions or comments there? Seeing none, we've got no correspondence, so we'll move on to councillor items. Councillor Frankel, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Again, I thank, it's too often I do this, but from the heart, I thank all of you for doing a lot of heavy lifting in absence of me helping the province with the BC timber sales review. So I just wanted to publicly say that. And all my meetings have been with that BC timber sales review. So thanks.
I have nothing to report.
Councillor Young.
I don't remember if I reported on March 18th around the primary care update with what was happening on the Hill. Really good meeting. I think the big thing that's coming out so far for me, it's the renderings are quite striking. It's going to be a very important, obviously, a structure in our community. It's moving along quite well. Big thing, it might sound a little funny to bring this up as a big thing, but an important thing is the naming process. We want to invite stakeholders. They want to make sure that council's involved and CICUS and other folks are all involved, so that there's going to be more about that. You might have already received something, Mr. Mayor.
No.
But that's supposed to be coming out. Some renderings should be coming to the DOV as well, so we can, with that process, start sharing things out as well. But I can't share anything out until they start that process. So that was a good meeting. And then it was good to be here last week though, when we had that meeting around the 100th anniversary. Lots already been planned and really moving forward with some work through the chamber and other community folks. So that's really exciting. And then for us to also get involved and make sure that's going to be more of a year-long celebration, not just a one-day affair. So looks like a great year in 2026 for sure. That's all for me.
Councillor Vandola.
Hi, Councillor Frankel and I attended the Council of Forest Industries AGM here on April 3rd and 4th. It was probably, of all the COFI meetings I've been to, probably the very best one I've attended, just from the speaker standpoint. Started off with Regional Chief Terry Teege, still again, speaking about partnerships and the necessity that they'd like to see, forest industry, partnering with First Nation communities. Also, First Nation, the Forestry Council, and they very much support dissolving BCTS altogether and then taking that volume and moving it into the First Nations side. Had a forest economist named Kirk Nyquist talking about the allowable annual cut of 60 million cubic meters provincially, that we're nowhere close to hitting that target. This last year, provincially, there was only 36 million logged out of the 60 million potential. Of course, he talked about lots of the regulatory complexity that has created a huge gap. They had a kind of a shot there of the forest competitiveness globally. And we were like, you'd have countries like Brazil that was like a positive 4% gains, where we were a minus 6%, against the, and they just talked about, we have an uncompetitive cost structure, and talked about conditions for the forest industry provincially are perceived as poor, and in a poor economic climate and poor attractiveness situation. A lot of it has to do with our tax system and whatnot. The economist had two recommendations that he thought it should go forward on behalf of BC Timber Sales Review. One, a much more revenue sharing with First Nations, and do away with a lot of the governance issues that BC Timber Sales have, and actually create a board of directors that manages the whole organization. John Rustad came a bit of a talk, same kind of echoing of the redo of BCTS. He talked about some things he'd like to do with stumpage, which were, he doesn't understand stumpage system very well. So for him to come about and say he'd like to have an end use tax instead of the way the stumpage system works, doesn't realize that would be a way to not utilize the fiber wholly.
Yeah.
So probably the very best speaker we had was the governor from Oregon. His name is John Kitzhaber. He's a emergency doctor out of Roseburg, Oregon. He had held the governorship for 3 terms. But he said the biggest issue that he had in the forest sector, especially when talking about wildfire resiliency, was the lack of imagination, and that governments have about not understanding the kind of regulatory regimes they should have in place. Where, one of the things they had in the late 70s, early 80s, they did lots of logging, and which make great access, but now things come back so dense in his local home area that and there's so much debris on the ground, it just makes for such a high volatile fire hazard areas that of course those are things that you never imagined in the past that we got to think about going forward in the future. Premier Eby talked about the target of the 60 million cubic meter AEC. They are, the mandate letter for our minister, Ravi Parmar, is they'd like to see 45 million hogged. So a bit of a bump from what we actually did, but to get there, timber sales has got to do their part in getting 20% of the allowable annual cut out on the market. And that was kind of the main parts for that meeting. On April 9th, I joined in on the Rio Tinto community leaders meeting. They had the 30-day precipitation forecast. They had about 46 millimeters of rain over that 30-day period, which was 75% of the long-term average. The reservoir is currently at 2,789.6, so it's just around 10 feet low. So they're concerned, and it's even with the forecasted over the next 10 or 30 days for precip. The only saving grace is it doesn't look like we're going to get a big warm stretch that'll create a lot of the snowpack to melt and have a huge freshet, where it'll probably be a slow event. So we probably won't see, much, no risk of flooding, of course, but they're hoping to fill the reservoir. And so, of course, they're still having to import power. So it's a bit of a challenge. And then today, Mayor Moutre and I attended the Northern Health Community Roundtable. Essentially, they're talking about the incentives they're doing to recruit and retain health professionals. They said that they had the highest gain of hires this last year, which was good to hear. Mayor Moutre talked about earlier during Robin Work's presentation, there's 13 LPN vacancies. We do have the HCAP program that we're hoping that they can have the piece where they can ladder from that program into an LPN program. But the problem is they have a 24-seat LPN program ready to go in Quesnel, but only 12 people have hit those seats. So now there's going to be a short of 12, where potentially we think we could be the service center for that program, and have local folks from the local area here join in on that LPN program, and we could post it here. Challenge is we don't have the laboratory equipment locally at the local college, so that's a change. They went over one of the things that's been good for Vanderhoof is that doctors like coming here, and we've done a good job recruiting, and we lost a husband-wife team, but we gained a husband-wife team, so it's all good. And then locums that come here really like coming here, and I don't know if it's because we have a facility for them to go to, but compared to our neighboring communities, You know, like our vacancy rate at, for health professionals here is 16%. Fort St. James is 28%, and it sounds like Burns Lake's worse than that. So, you know, good on us for the work that we've done in the past. One of the things that they don't really think about is they talk about, generationally new hires aren't interested in working full time. They want to have part-time job because they, you know, work-life balance is super important to them. And, you know, maybe it's something that we should have looked at when we were, you know, in the business, but doing, you know, the lots of hours during the week, as lots of us did as we grew up. That's not the goal of a lot of young people. They want to have a lot more free time. And so what's happened is they have enough people in butts in chairs, but they're not working full time. So it makes us short. So it's a bit of a challenge. So yeah, it was the idea of the roundtable was to have folks from the community provide input and come up with solutions to help out. But at the table that Mayor Moutre and I were at, we just kind of talked about what was going on. There was very few solutions, and our fear was that it was kind of a ticky box exercise. So hopefully that's not the case, and we'll get to hear some, you know, something coming up in the future that see us gain some more health professionals in our community. That's it for me.
Mr. Ballmer.
Nothing much for me. I attended the Centennial meeting and found that extremely exciting and looking forward to working on planning much more for that. That's it for me.
Mr. Martins.
Thanks. Not a lot for me either. I was just, was gonna, Councillor Frankel mentioned to thank everybody for covering for him, so to speak, however you so eloquently worded it. But I think reciprocal is probably in favor too. Maybe we should be thanking you for all your hard work as well. And I feel we're lucky, or I feel that way personally anyway, that we got the right guy down there doing it. So thanks for what you're doing there, Councillor. And then just as far as the Councillor Young and Bomer mentioned it too, as far as the 100th anniversary thing, we were just very, very early preliminary stuff after we had that meeting. It was exciting, but even talking to just townspeople and bringing it up and kind of something, you know, maybe to look forward to, and you got any good ideas? And it seemed like it was a pretty well received, something positive, and I'm always cheering for that anyway. So I thought that was really good for sure. So thank you.
You were brought up.
Watch the recording, haven't you? Okay. I'll just start with it was really nice to take 2 weeks away, and thanks for everybody that covered during that time and made that happen so smoothly. Going back to last week again, it was great to get that centennial planning started. I think it's going to be a great event, and the community is going to really love it. Friday, can't go into the details, but we had a regional District of Vanderhoof, Nechako First Nations meeting here that went really well. I can just say that the atmosphere in the room was wonderful, and I look forward to what that could do even after we pass this MOU stage with those players around the table. As has been stated, today we had the Northern Health that Dave reported on so well, but one thing I'll just quickly throw out there was that the provincial vacancy rate, the underlying vacancy rate was 20%. So although we find frustrations with where we are, we're actually beating the provincial average. So it's a place to be. And the thing to remember with this, and none of us want to see definitely ER closures, and we don't want to see reductions in service generally in healthcare, but remembering that this is an international problem, and you know, we have to recognize that. And the whole Western world is screaming for healthcare professionals. Rio Tinto update, Dave talked about too, but yeah, I mean, the big news is there's no water, and you know that is the news we've had for a long time, and don't see that changing. One thing just to keep in mind is that they are in a stripe position at the smelter in July, which seems an unbelievably short time from when they restarted after the last disruption. So just something that we should keep on our mind at this end of the watershed. Good. One thing I will just add, and I'll just check the time, is there's a mayors and chairs meeting on Wednesday at, no, when is it? I will send that out because it's not showing up in, oh no, it's on the 23rd. Sorry, Wednesday the 23rd. There's a mayors and chairs at 3:15. I'm going to take that here. It's with emergency management. So then anybody, any counselor that's interested in joining can come along and take part in that too. Good. And with that, declare us adjourned.